introduction. Again, my name's Gloria. I'm the owner and lead instructor over at Recalibrate. We were founded in 2018. Just to give you a little bit of context as to how I got into founding this company. Before Recalibrate, I joked that I was an expert in stress before an expert in mental wellness. I actually hail from about a decade in management consulting, working mostly in technology, strategy, and implementation for Fortune 50, 500 firms. Loved my former career, really got a lot of fulfillment from it, but also at the same time really fed into building my self-worth around hustling and sleep deprivation and being on a plane twice a week and all of that good stuff. And it wasn't until late 2017 that I really had a different look at that, when I really started struggling with chronic migraines, where, long story short, I did not win my initial battle with chronic migraines. They wiped me out, and I did not expect that. As someone who prided myself on tolerance of all things, and high pain tolerance, a go-getter, someone who could stick it through anything. I didn't think that a physical ailment was going to knock me out, but it did, and it took me out of work ultimately for about 2 months, which was initially crushing for me. But as I look back, I think sometimes it just gets knocked clean off your feet onto your tuchus to get some really important perspective growth. Part of that for me was educating myself around just the science behind mental wellness and the science behind how our bodies and brains are connected, and finding mindfulness in a way that was more tangible and implementable. And for me, having really grown up in this heavy corporate culture where we kind of glamorize stress and we wear hustle and busy as a badge of honor, I just realized that we have to be able to do better for ourselves, right? When there's so much science behind how our brains work that explains so many of the human experiences we have behind anxiety and stress and thinking that we're not enough, we should just have those science-based tools to do better for ourselves, especially in a society where we know all the science of how our bodies work from here down, right? We all generally know what biceps do and how to get a six-pack if we want to, and all the ins and outs out of a keto diet or what have you, but for some reason, we don't know a lot about how our brains work, and that's what runs everything for us. So we're all about working for healthy minds in not only a modern and science-backed way, but a realistic way to build into your lives as well. Today we're talking about silence, which is funny because we're talking about silence. The irony is not lost on me. When I was thinking about this, right, I was thinking and looking up the definition of silence, and the formal definition of silence is the absence of noise. And so I got to thinking about that, right? And I realized that for a lot of us, that seems a little uncomfortable. Quick poll of the audience. How many of you guys, when you think about complete silence, that makes you a little antsy or uncomfortable? A good amount of us, yeah. How many of you, when you think about silence, it makes you feel super comfortable and calm and safe? Okay, good. Half and half. I like it. So when I think about silence, I want to break this down into external silence and internal silence, right? I think there's one version of absence of noise where it's absence of external noise, no noise around us. But then on the flip side, there's also, I think, a concept of silence around internal silence, right? For a lot of us who get more uncomfortable when we think about silence, sometimes myself included, right? It's because as soon as you turn off the outside noise, then the inside noise gets pretty stinking loud. For example, how many of you guys have been on a bad date or an uncomfortable date before? All right, and then the rest of you are just lying. So that's a great example of this, right? When the conversation lulls and there's just silence and you don't know what to say, there's both the external silence, but then what really makes us uncomfortable oftentimes is the internal noise that starts to pick up, right? Because then inside your head, the thoughts are either, oh my God, what do I say? Am I being awkward? I feel so awkward. Am I not going to impress this person? Or it's the flip side, more defensive around, oh, this person sucks. When am I going to get out of here? Is there a way I can check my phone? And the internal noise gets really loud. That's the same thing around a lot of us who try to meditate, who try to find mindfulness, who try to find stress management. As soon as you try to relax, everything gets so loud, and there are the voices that say, Why are you slowing down? What are you missing out on? What opportunity costs are there? Are you being lazy? Are you going to slide straight into complacency and lose all of the things that you have worked for, right? Silence can be really uncomfortable, not only because of the external silence, but because of the internal noise that really picks up for us. So today we're going to talk just a little bit, very quickly, about why silence is important for our brains and bodies, but why it's also important just for creativity, for playfulness, as well as our human experience of life. So 3 things we're going to talk about in terms of silence and in relation to silence: stress, safety, and human gold, which we'll explain what those things mean. So when it comes to stress, how many of you guys know that when you're stressed out, your brain feels like it's just a little bit more wonky and it isn't working as well? Yeah. When you're stressed, you feel absent-minded, you feel demotivated, you feel scatterbrained, all those things. That's because stress is what we call the fight or flight response in neuropsychology, right? A lot of us are familiar with that. Cortisol is firing, you're on the defensive. It's a very reflexive response in our brains and bodies that was evolved way back when for physical threats at hand, right? And so this response a lot of times will put your body into a really tense place. Your muscular tension goes up, your heart rate increases. Different parts of your body and brain are actually de-resourced if they're not survivalistic, so that we can extra increase our resourcing for anything that is survivalistic, so that we can make sure in moments of physical danger we are on the ready, on the defense. What happens in your brain when you're stressed out is essentially that the more animal reflexive part of our brain comes way online and we're super defensive and on alert, whereas the more human, rational part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, actually gets de-resourced because it's a nice to have, right? If I am potentially running from a tiger or running from an attacker, I don't need to rationalize that. I need to just run and be on the alert. Even in modern day, right, if there's a hot fire stove in front of me, I don't need to rationally think about getting out of the way. I just need to jump out of the way. And so that part of our brain is the strongest part of our brain, because survival is the number one thing that our brain does for us, make sure that we do not have to think about surviving. However, nowadays, we're mostly in creature comforts, right? We don't have a ton of physical danger around us. Most of the danger that our brain perceives nowadays around emotional danger, emotional stress. And our brain is reading that and still turning us into the same stress response, the same full body response, as if we were in physical danger, right? So we get a shitty email from a boss or a teammate. We compare ourselves to someone on social media. And our brain immediately takes that in as some kind of pressure or danger, turns us into the stress response, and then our biochemical state is completely altered. The reason this is important when it comes to creativity is that we've been studying creativity for a long time around how it occurs in the brain. And what makes it really unique is that generally when we're studying what parts of the brain do what in neuroscience, there are very specific parts of the brain that are responsible for different things, right? I was talking about how we have a more animal reflexive brain that's responsible for all the things that are involuntary and keep us safe. And then we have a more human prefrontal cortex brain that does all the things that make us human around empathy, anticipation, complex thinking, and creativity, partly. What's interesting is that as we have studied creativity, we've found that there's no one specific part of the brain that is solely responsible for creativity. Rather, there are up to 11 different areas of the brain, all across different functions of the brain, from animalistic to human, that are required to perform creatively, which is a huge and very interesting finding when it comes to neuroscience. We both need the ability to have executive reasoning and functioning and being able to hone in on something, but at the same time, we also need the motor functions to be able to be aware of how our body's moving or how perceiving how different things move around us, right? And so the reason stress is really important when it comes to overlapping with creativity is that if we're in a stress response, a good amount of our brain is completely de-resourced. Our brain isn't functioning in an integrated, balanced way, and that's going to mean it's really going to be difficult for our brain to turn on all 11 areas that we need to perform optimally with creative tasks. If we know that stress is a hindrance to creativity and just a hindrance to things in general, that means what we often need to seek out is a sense of safety for our brain. Anytime stress is firing, it means that our body, our brain is perceiving some kind of shade of danger. So when it comes to safety, what does that mean and how does that relate to silence? So in general, our brains just don't like a lot of noise. From a survivalistic standpoint, our brains are always scanning for stimuli that might be a threat. Different noises are totally part of that. That's why loud noises in general make you jump without having to think about it. That's why many of us don't like a lot of noise when we're trying to perform certain tasks. That's also why a lot of us can't go to sleep without having a nice amount of silence, because the brain is always on the lookout, and anytime we hear noise, it's going to be hard for our nervous system to get into a relaxed place where we sense safety and we can allow all of those functions to come online, like rest and digestion and reproduction, that we need, but we need a sense of safety to be able to do that. The other big thing around silence and creativity and safety is that without having a little bit of playfulness, it's really hard to get creative, right? And we cannot enter a state of playfulness. We can't not enter a place of pure joy and playfulness if there's any perception of danger around, right? Danger and play just don't coexist in our minds. We have to have a sense of safety in order to feel joy and playfulness and to be able to do things just for the joy of it. And so that's a huge part of being able to foster safety and creativity for ourselves. The other big thing here, when we talk about external and internal noise, right? For a lot of us, it's not that hard to create external silence for ourselves. You just turn off whatever noise is around, or you put on a relaxing soundtrack, you close the door. That's not that hard. What we struggle with the most is finding that internal silence, right? Calming down the internal noise. That's where often it is hardest to create a form of safety for ourselves, because those voices start to pop up. And that's where so much of our work focuses, is around mindfulness. Mindfulness, the definition, is being deliberately, non-judgmentally aware of the present moment. Breaking that down very, very quickly, being present is being mentally present in the here and now, not thinking about the future, the past, or having your brain be somewhere else where your body isn't. Being non-judgmentally aware is being really aware objectively of your reactions, but also recognizing that every single one of our thoughts, reactions, emotions that we have are learned from a past experience. In neuroscience and in mindfulness, we just know that the brain is very adaptive, and whatever it learns from the past, it's trying to anticipate in the future. So anytime we have one experience, our brain's going to be looking for signals that that next experience is coming up, and it's going to throw up the same emotion, the same reaction, what have you. So every reaction we have in the here and now is something that we learned in the past. And mindfulness is all about being able to say, okay, I know I'm having this reaction. I know I learned it in the past. Based on where I am right here and right now, is this reaction truly productive and relevant to the here and now, or am I just automating this response from the past? That is huge for when it comes to internal safety, right? And understanding where the voices, the narratives in our mind came from, why our brain adapted self-criticism or self-doubt as a defense mechanism, and being able to understand that they're not necessarily reflective of what's actually happening in front of us. I think of mindfulness a lot as just getting comfortable and feeling at home in the mind, right? And that's a huge thing for being able to find safety, as well as just peacefulness and knowing yourself and knowing your self-worth. Last thing that I think is just so important around silence is that without moments of silence, we don't have some of the biggest moments in life, right? Without silence, without a feeling of safety, especially mentally, it becomes really hard to find those moments of introspection, of reflection, and of learning. Whenever you think about your really, really big moments in life, a lot of times you will find that there had to be some kind of silence and internal reflection in those moments, right? The moment that you realize that you're not with the right person in a relationship and it's not working, and you've been looking at every other reason to look at besides that. The moment that you realize a job is not working out for you, and the identity that you've been feeding into that whole time isn't working either, and that you know you need to make a change. The moment that you lost your temper at a kid or a loved one or your friend, and you realize that you messed up and that you need to apologize. Those really hard, tough moments where you feel crappy for days or weeks or months, but then you turn the corner and realize that you've learned something and that you need to do something different and you're heading in a new direction. Those are all moments that we have only with true silence and true introspection and connection into ourselves. And I think that is just the biggest nugget of silence, right? In those moments of silence and introspection is where we find our human gold, of where we find creativity and exploration and growth and transformation and human connection and love and play. Those are all moments that we need in life, and those are all part of the human experience that make life so stinking beautiful to live in. Today, we're gonna not just talk about silence and how it's important to our brains and bodies, but we're actually gonna do some stuff to experience it hands-on. We're gonna do a little bit of just a mindfulness meditation exercise to start off of the day. If you could all do me a favor and kind of put both feet on your floor, uncross legs, starting to just settle into an upright posture in your seat, losing any tension in the shoulders, relaxing the hands in the lap or by the side. And then as you're ready, just starting to close the eyes. With the eyes closed, we'll spend a few moments just adjusting to what it's like having the eyes closed. Spend a few moments noticing which of the other senses start to pick up. Starting with the sense of sound, of course. Just spending a few moments noticing to yourself the different sounds that you start to pick up on. From the sound of my voice to the sound of footsteps, photos clicking, maybe even the sound of your own breath or your neighbor's breathing. Just spending a moment listening, getting used to it. And then wiggling the fingers a little bit. Just noticing the textures underneath the fingers, underneath the palms. Wiggling the toes a little bit, noticing the feeling of shoes around the feet, noticing the weight of the feet sinking into the floor. And then just starting to tune into the feeling of your breath. Just starting to notice the depth and the speed of the breath, which parts of the body are rising and falling with the breath, where you feel the breath, just tracing each inhale and exhale out of the body, just starting to tune into the physical feeling of the breath. And then keeping the mouth gently closed, breathing in through the nose, start to take a deep inhale and a deep exhale. Another deep inhale and a long extended exhale, breathing out as slowly as you can. Another deep inhale. Another slow extended exhale. On the next inhale, counting the breath in for 3, 2, 1. Exhaling 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling for 3, 2, 1. Exhaling 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Keep breathing in this pattern on your own for a few moments, just counting the breath and making that exhale twice as long as the inhale. Spending a few moments in stillness, just focusing on the counts of the breath, the physical feeling of the breath, the sound of the breath. As you continue to breathe in this pattern, as you maintain the count, start to see if you can send the breath even deeper into the body as you take the inhale, breathing deep into the base of the belly, expanding the walls of the stomach on the inhale. As you take the double exhale, allowing the stomach to melt and soften. Spending a few more moments counting the breath in this pattern, just breathing deeper into the body as you do. Noticing the physical feeling of the breath coming in and out of the stomach. And perhaps as you continue this breathing pattern, as you breathe deep into the body, you'll even notice any tension that can start to melt away, noticing there in the face. If the eyebrows can unfurrow, the eyelids can unclench while staying closed. If the cheeks and the jaws can unclench and soften, the shoulders maybe melt down the back a little bit, the chest and stomach get a little softer. Spending a few last moments here, just start to gently let go of the counts now. Let go of the pattern, starting to sink back into your natural breath. Starting to notice once again the feeling of the feet on the floor, feeling of the chair underneath you. Sounds around you once again. As you're ready, keeping the gaze downward and soft, just start to flutter the eyelids open, coming back into the room. Welcome back, y'all. How many of you guys feel a little more relaxed than you did before? Yeah, wonderful. So, to give you guys just a little bit of a tidbit around that exercise, that's a really nice way to find a little bit of silence, especially out of the mental noise. Reason being is that for a lot of us, we spend all day in our heads, right? So our brain is only focused on what's happening up here. And we lose connection into what's happening actually in our body, and we're not working those neural pathways. So when we can actually just feel and focus on what's physically happening in our body, our brain is forced to spend some resources into registering what's happening physically in the body. And that means it de-resources all the focus of what's happening in the head. That not only helps us calm the mental chatter and escape it for a little bit, it also helps the brain register that we have physical safety because it can feel that our feet are on the floor, that our chair is underneath us. And that's really soothing for the nervous system, and it actually is proven to counteract any stress response. So that's a trick that you can use that's really helpful. That double exhale, quick biomechanics of that before we close. Essentially, the inhale and exhale are responsible for different functions in our nervous system. The inhale is responsible for turning everything up, turns up our heart rate, turns up our energy. It's the part of the nervous system that goes upward when we're exercising, stressed, excited. That's why anytime you are exercising or running, your inhale is always naturally going to be longer. On the flip side, the exhale turns on the parasympathetic nervous system, which turns everything down. It turns our heart rate down. It releases our muscular tension. It helps us relax and digest things. This is why anytime we're all stressed or annoyed, we all do the right? Nobody taught us that. That's the nervous system's natural way of down-regulating ourselves. So by playing with the ratios of our breath, it's a really nice system override to calming us down a lot of the times. When it's too hard to mentally say calm down or calm down the mental chatter, you can just start counting your breath, make the exhale twice as long, and that will snap your nervous system into being in a more calm state. Thank you guys so much for participating in these exercises. I'll hang around for a little bit if any of y'all have one-on-one questions. I appreciate you guys spending the time and talking about silence, and I hope that you guys can find a few more moments of internal and external silence for yourselves. Thank you so much.